Hello and welcome back to another episode of PACOP Clinical Bites. My name's Laura, I'm one of the improvement facilitators, and today I'm going to run you through the PACOP profile collection tools and processes. So to start off with, let me tell you a little bit about the PACOP profile collection. It is a standardised assessment process for all residents, and it seeks to identify deterioration, changing needs, and the need for palliative or end-of-life care. It comes with 3 tools and there's 3 steps. Let me walk you through them. There's 3 tools that form the profile collection. The first form is an admission and discharge or death details. The second assessment tool is for clinical assessment of your residents, and it occurs every 3 months. And there's a face-to-face component, a desktop assessment, and an action plan. The third tool is one of our favourites, and it was developed in specific requests from the residential aged care facilities, and that's the Deteriorating Resident tool. This is the profile admission and discharge and death details, and this forms a bit like the bookends. So when we start, there's a resident that might be a new admission to your home, or maybe you're implementing PACOP and you need to register your residents with the program. We pull out this tool and we fill in the top section here. And this signifies the start of their profile. During their stay or their admission, they might have a couple of assessments under the profile or a deteriorating resident tool. And then if they're discharged from the aged care home or if they're deceased, we come back and we complete the bottom section of this tool. And that signifies the end of their enrolment into the profile collection. So here is a look at the profile collection 3-part clinical assessment, and this is part A, the face-to-face assessment. So we ask that the clinician go and take this form and do the assessment with the resident face-to-face, because the SAS here is resident rated, so we involve them in the assessment. Now, if you need further details on any of the assessments, I'd advise you to go and review the PACOP Clinical Bites series, where we go into each standardised assessment tool in more detail. So here we've got the problem severity score, pain check for those homes that use pain check for their residents with communication or cognitive impairment, and they might not be able to identify and advocate when they've got pain. The AKPS and the RUG-ADL, these look at function and performance. Our Rockwood Clinical Frailty Scale for cognitive and physical frailty. And then there's some really important questions here at the bottom on communication and psychosocial wellbeing. Now this is part B of the clinical assessment, and this is the desktop assessment. So once you've done a face-to-face assessment, we want you to go back to the desk and we want you to have a look through the resident's file. We want you to have a think about their diagnostic cluster, and this is identifying that our residents, they often have complex comorbidities and their health needs may change over time. So we're trying to capture over the last week, what was the main reason that they needed care? This also allows us to capture disease progression and symptom changes. There's a prompt here for advanced care planning and decision making. This is great for prompting staff to know, where are these documents kept? How do we communicate the residents' needs? Have we had those conversations? And this is anticipatory planning. It's a really good clinical prompt for your staff. There's information about recent hospital use. And then there's a section at the bottom there for the ANAC as well. You've done an amazing clinical assessment and you've done 2 of the 3 parts. So now what? Well, we're going to call a little pause, a little time out, and we want to ask you some questions to really think critically about the resident's condition and whether you think there's an identified need to commence palliative care or end-of-life care. This is really about identifying changing needs and how quickly or urgently we need to respond. Down the bottom here is our action plan. So we've got all of this great information, we've made a judgment, and now what do we need to do about it? So there's really 3 different courses of action here. The first one is no action required. Maybe your resident's stable, their care plan's meeting all their needs, and everything's going along well. The second step of the action plan is about internal aged care home practices. So maybe they need a referral to the palliative or end-of-life care plan. We can start those discussions. Maybe they need a family conference. Maybe they haven't had an advanced care plan made and we need to make one for our resident. So this really forces us to consider their condition with our organisational policies to make sure that we're meeting their needs and addressing them internally. The second part is external referral to address their care needs. Maybe they need to see their specialist or their GP, allied health, or the specialist palliative care team, or maybe they need a new ANAC assessment. So this is where we're asking these questions for the clinicians. Do we need to go further to address their care needs? And here is the Deteriorating Resident tool. You'll notice that it's green. So it's green because we want it to be your go-to guide. We want you to go to this form if there's deterioration in the resident, if a care worker has said that there's concern, if the family are worried and they're asking you, can you come and have a look at my mum or my family member? We want you to grab this form and go and have a look with the resident, and it takes less than 3-4 minutes. It's very quick tick box. The same standard assessments as we went through before. There's the SAS, problem severity score, the AKPS, and the Rockwood. And this is really going to drill down and identify any changes in their condition. And then at the bottom again, we've got our prompts from the profile assessment you just saw. And again, this is to identify, is there changes? Do we need to commence palliative or end-of-life care? And so that's the 3 steps of the profile collection. Step 1, the completed admission and discharge or death detail form. And that's done once at the start and the end of the profile collection for the resident. Step 2, the routine profile clinical assessment, and it's done within 24 hours of admission and a minimum of every 3 months. It's ideal for screening for the need for palliative care for residents who may have had a slow and general decline, and you've only identified it on a really comprehensive and holistic view every 3 months. And then step 3 is the Deteriorating Resident tool if it's needed. So upon clinical deterioration or concern, and it screens for the need for the outcomes as well. So you'll notice here the outcomes collection is in brackets, and that's because the outcomes collection is for residents who have an identified need for palliative care. So the profile identifies that need, and then we move them into the outcomes where we deliver the palliative and end-of-life care. So thank you so much for joining us to go through the profile collection process and tools. Be sure to check out our other PACOP Clinical Bites videos where we go into the standardised assessment tools in much more detail for you. And for more detailed information on any of our assessment tools or resources, you can ask your local PACOP contact, or you can send us an email at pacop@uow.edu.au. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you soon.